Well, hey everybody. My name is Jared Malott. I'm here with my good friend Mateo Cleese. This is the Coltist, episode 33, aka the Melvin Bullitt episode. Former defensive back for the Colts, played for us for 5 seasons, had 7 interceptions, a couple forced fumbles, 193 tackles. Melvin Bullitt.
Yeah, we
And
were just talking about how that was like that has to be among the sickest names for a Colts player.
yeah,
Like
for
in
especially
recent
for a
memory.
defensive player, Bullitt.
Yeah,
Um,
Bullitt.
yeah, absolutely. So here we are, 1 week out, effectively, as we record this Sunday night, September 4th, for Sunday morning. So hey everybody, if you like the content that we produce here, if you would follow my YouTube channel, I'd really appreciate it. If you would, as we get to share this on the Stampede Blue platform, if you'd share the tweet you got here from, that'd be helpful. Just to spread the word, man. But here we are, a week out from week one of the 2022-23
Yeah, finally.
NFL regular season.
Finally.
Finally here.
You know,
No more preseason. No more who's a starter. We kind of have a really good idea now. And I start off by asking you a question. Is your biggest concern the new quarterback or the new left tackle? And go.
yeah. I'm not worried about my priority at left tackle. I believe that he was really solid last year when playing. He played either the left or the right side.
Mhm.
He was okay. He was nothing spectacular, but he was okay in the run game. He was okay in the passing game.
Mhm.
And he plays next to Quentin Nelson, so that has to be a big plus, having a guy like that next to you. So yeah, my concern would be quarterback, but I am not that concerned about Matt Ryan. I'm concerned about his lack of mobility, his age. Yeah, it could be better, but it also could be much, much worse. So he should be okay.
Could be Philip Rivers, right?
Yeah.
Love
at
you.
least.
He's a little more mobile than Philip Rivers. Still a little more mobile even than
Yeah,
Jacoby before him. Obviously not quite as mobile
Quite
as
Andrew Luck,
Andrew Luck.
Sam Ellinger.
And how about that though? We talked about that last week about how the Colts had an interesting decision on their hands when it came to a guy like Sam Ellinger, simply because he has a bit of athletic ability that the other two quarterbacks do not have.
Simply do not have. Yeah.
And frankly, the kind of trouble Matt Ryan's going to get in is the kind of trouble Sam Ellinger can get out of, right? So that's at least my thought process in why you got to kind of keep him, and hope that this offensive line can get some reps together, all healthy, as many as you can early in the season. That way
Yeah,
you don't
that
feel,
is going to be big. Yeah.
that way you feel
You
like you
remember
could.
last season?
Mhm.
Yeah, where Braden Smith was injured, like for a big part of the first season, and Quentin Nelson got banged up. Then it was, you had that issue at right guard where Lewinsky was playing, and then Chris Reed was playing, and then Ryan Kelly got injured, and then Eric Fisher was injured, and Julian Davenport was playing. It was just like we could never really get it going there. We had no continuity. And it killed the team, man.
And we've talked about how important it is to have continuity and consistency, all the way down to the trenches, right? It starts up front. If you think about organizations that are consistently winning, they're not having to address offensive line woes. It's taken care of, right? Your Pittsburghs, your New Englands, your Dallas, they always have good offensive lines. That may not be able to have things going on around that, but hey, their big boys are always real good.
Yeah.
So the Colts, obviously, new quarterback, new left tackle. How about gotta have a new wide receiver too, right? Michael Pittman pretty much entrenched as your number one wide receiver, probably going to get the lion's share of the pass attempts are going to go his way. I have no doubts, no doubts in the kid. I'm a USC fan, so hey, I'm happy. I'm happy for him, for us, for me. But I'm thinking a lot about this week. I'm thinking about Alec Pierce making his first start in the
Yeah.
NFL, on the road, no less, in the house that TY built. And my hope is the the lack of depth that Houston has, particularly in the secondary, allows a guy like Alec Pierce to get
Yes.
maybe an early touchdown, right? Strike it
Yes.
real
100%.
quick. That way he could play with a great
Start
deal
your
of
career off
confidence.
with the right foot.
Hmm.
Get that confidence in early. My prediction is that Alec Pierce is going to be okay, but Harris Campbell is going to have like a true like a breakout game. I expect something like perhaps 2 touchdowns or 100
Hmm.
yards. He's like, okay, this is a guy that could be like perhaps the X factor for Colts offense, or like if
Yeah.
this guy performs and then just remain somewhat healthy, like not even 17 games, just give us 10/12.
Yeah.
He could be big with a quarterback like Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
That is the guy that I put my money on for like having a surprise breakout year if he manages to remain healthy.
Right. The new Madden came out, and I've obviously started a franchise with the Colts. And while Jonathan Taylor is amazing, one of the things that again it kind of takes my breath away is Naheem Hines' stature in terms of the offensive line and his mobility and how much of a weapon it is, and how especially when Naheem Hines or when Jonathan Taylor breaks a long run, my thought process is anything over 20 yards, the back should sub out. And you should get a new back in because you're missing if that back's having to turn around and run way back to the huddle, call the play, and run back up, you can just have him stay on the sideline, have another back come in and be 10 seconds faster,
Yeah.
right? So that's my thought process with like how much of a weapon Hines is. Sub a little more frequently because your offense is going to work so much better when it just flows through that running back position. And Naeem Hines is really is a difference maker because as opposed to running at a shoulder pad level, a 6 foot ish, right? He's a
Yeah.
full 4 or 5 inches lower. He's a full shoulder pad level lower, and just so much more elusive. And again, the more I think about it, I kind of expect that Houston will hold up as long as their depth does, right?
Yeah.
And then ultimately the game gets away from them just because this football is a dangerous sport, a violent sport, and injuries are going to be a factor. Obviously, the number 2 tight end for Houston is now OJ Howard, who they just signed. The Texans just signed this past week, right?
So
Coming
yeah,
out,
yeah, you're good.
he's going to get a lot of reps. He's going to get even targets. But again, I think
Yeah, he's a guy. No way he knows the offense. No way he develops any sort of connection with Davis Mills, and that's a guy that's going to get some meaningful reps.
right. And the thing about it is like if he was capable of developing a rapport quickly, specifically offensively with a quarterback, like he wouldn't be being signed the week before the season starts. Like he definitely would have already been entrenched in a roster and declared like a starter already. But here he's filling a role just because of injuries at the tight end position for Houston. But yeah, so when I was looking at the roster for Houston, I was looking at their depth, and they're pretty thin. Like I've said, pretty much everywhere, but like they're thin at wide receiver. They only
Yeah.
have 5. They're thin at tight end. They only have 2. And then obviously, I'm guessing up front, it's not much to speak of. It's not like anybody's winning awards on Houston's offensive or defensive lines. They do have Jerry Hughes on defense, but they're thin at corner, and bodes well for my wide receivers. We should be able
Yeah.
to play with a lot of confidence knowing that, hey, if you make them run at all and their conditioning isn't like top notch, the guy that's coming in behind them is off the street
Yeah.
effectively, right? Like, um, and I think that obviously bodes well for the Colts that are built a little more like to play in the postseason, for example, where I don't think Houston's that way. But I do expect. I don't. I'm still iffy. It's almost like now that I've seen their roster and how bad injuries have gotten them already, I'm like, the Houston's going to actually have a really bad year. So this is this isn't going to be nearly the game I thought. I went into this thinking. The Colts are -8 on the road. My rules in terms of gambling are the home team gets 3 points unless you're bad.
So yeah, that's a great
So
team.
not only does Vegas have the Colts winning by more than a touchdown, and they're willing to, if you think they're going to win by more than 8, you're going to have to bet. I normally wouldn't recommend that, but you're just betting on the Colts, heads up at the least, and taking the 8 if that's what
Yeah.
if that's what you're getting it
Yes.
at. Because I think if I regularly have to check myself, like I don't know much about football, I guess, but when I look at what their availability will look like Sunday, I'm concerned if Houston's got 46 for game day. So I mean, I get it that they're going to have to sign some guys, but I'm still thinking like they might be even shy of that. Just looking at raw numbers, just how thin they are comparatively. Like if you compare it to the Colts 53, you're like, oh, they don't even have. Yeah, they're gonna have to sign some people. So
Yeah.
that doesn't bode well. And
For
especially
your
sucks because they're hosting too. Yeah, like that's a rough host. Obviously it helps because we're Colts fans that you're like, hell yeah, I'm glad the Colts appear to have a team that's a little banged up and is going to be playing some UDFAs. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um,
for the Colts it bodes well.
so just because the Colts a lot, I would venture to say 50 of the 53 and 43 of the 46 have been on the team. Because like some of these practice squad guys they've signed, right?
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
that were rather new to the team. But yeah, I think other than when I was looking at the numbers, Houston last year was 31st in the NFL against the run. And the only appreciable metric that I could think of when it comes to figuring out if you're good or bad at this, defending the run, has to be like yards per game. Um, Yards per carry is not a great metric because when I looked at defenses and how many yards they allow, they're all right there. 4 to 4,
Yeah.
it's like 3.8 to 5.1. Like that's 1.5 yards. It's not that big a deal. But when you look at some of the better teams in the league are allowing less than 100 yards pretty regularly. Uh, Houston was really bad at that last year and also allowed like 60 yards in excess of what some of the better teams in the NFL do in terms of rushing per game. So I have to think with the Colts having Jonathan Taylor, the best running back in the NFL last year by what, like 500 yards, that he's
Yeah.
probably going to have a good day too. So yeah, it's time to get excited if you're a Colts fan. I get it. I don't sound excited, but damn, it feels like it's been the quietest off season,
Yeah. It feels like
despite a couple
it has to come for like
monster
2
signings, right? In
Yeah.
my eyes,
We
it feels
no
like it's been,
news.
which is good news. No news is good news, but I think
Yeah.
when we look back on this season, like how impactful was Unique Ngakwe and Matt Ryan, like that's the story.
Stephon
That's the
Gilmore.
Stephon Gilmore too. Like
That's the biggest sign in my opinion. I mean, he was had some bad luck with injuries in Carolina, but that was the guy that he was a defensive player of the year.
yeah,
You're getting cornerback. What is he like? 31, 32? I mean, he's not that old.
no,
He's
no,
of course
and
he's not in his prime, but
well,
he's still there.
from what I understand, he had a hell of a camp too.
Yeah.
Um, and then obviously the elephant in the room, Shaquille Leonard, in a move that ultimately, if you're a pro wrestling fan, should surprise no one. Uh, Darius Leonard, after having back surgery and ankle surgery, you kind of wonder when's he coming back. Removed was he removed from PUP?
Yeah.
Officially listed as questionable week 1. May not play, so I don't want to get my hopes up. But then the official Colts Twitter account releases like a little highlight video of him dropping
Getting
back,
interception.
breaking, and making a diving interception. And from this last practice, and you're thinking like, huh, the return,
Yeah,
right? Like he comes
he
back
said
and
that it's been the first time since his rookie season where he's been pain free. He even said it, and you could tell it on tape last year that he was like, when he made a play that involved, some running sideline to sideline or got an interception, and was like limping. He didn't have the same explosiveness.
Oh yeah.
So now watching him back, if it were up to me, I would not play him. I would not play this game, nor against the Jags.
No, like week 3 and 4 and 5, it would be much preferred. You don't necessarily. I don't think you need him to beat these two teams to start the year.
And back injuries tend to be really complicated, and you're going up against teams. The Texans are probably going to be running the ball a lot, and it's just you never want to look over an opponent, and you never want to underestimate an opponent, of course. Right. I mean, this is your franchise player you're talking about. This is the guy that runs your defense.
Right.
Why risk it when you're going off against like two terrible franchises?
Yeah.
There's just no need.
Right. And I also know that prior to this podcast, we've been kind of timid about how we expect these first couple weeks to go, but the closer we get to it and the more information that comes out, like I said, when it comes down to who's available for the game, it's as if we've never talked about that on a podcast that I was on, where, for example, when I interviewed, not Pat McAfee, trying to remember what was the tight end that I interviewed?
Eric
Ebron. And I asked him, what have you learned this year? And this was obviously back when he was a Colt. Availability is the best ability, right? Yeah, everybody wants to say what kind of talent they've got and that they can bring to the table, but the ultimate ability is on game day or when you're needed. Are you there?
Are you able to play? Yeah.
And so I get it. I want him to play. I want him to be invincible, live forever. So I get what you're saying, where it's like, hey, you don't really need him. You're right. I'd love for him to play because I know he wants to. Wants to be out there leading the D. Obviously, whatever happens, happens. But I, for the first time in a while, I feel kind of at ease where I'm like, no, we're gonna be fine. There's no way Matt Ryan's gonna let this get away from him because it's almost too easy. And again, I play video games. That's what I do as a hobby. So I'm gonna speak like I play video games. When I play Madden, even when I play against other people, it's hard for them you can't just guard like you play man up or man up with a safety over the top, either one, and then spy the quarterback running back, right? So like even if you're playing against Ravens would be like a chalk Madden team, right? If you have the linebacker constantly spying the quarterback running back, that's their job, and then you just take away their number one wide receiver. Generally, a team like the Ravens, you could stop that offense, right? But what the Colts have the unique, and again, I wouldn't even say tight end solved. It's just that I keep seeing guys like Mo Alley Cox. I keep seeing is it Strawn? Is that how you say his name? And then and Granson. They are a factor in the Colts offense, but more of as a collective than you would think, more of like a unit than you would think like a single player. And then, like I said, Michael Pittman, I am not concerned at all about. He's a man among boys. And then when you think about the quality of work he's been getting with a guy like Stephon Gilmore, right? And then even to think about how much better a guy like Naeem Hines gets going against a guy like Kenny Moore. right? Like the only other kind of player that could even
Yeah, iron
be on
sharpens
your
iron.
be beyond your level. So iron sharpening iron has the potential here to really lift the Colts. Like I said, whether or not Shaq Leonard plays. I'm trying to think if there's any other things other than by the way, I thought it was crazy. The Colts signed the punter from the Bills and the Bills punter.
Matt Hack.
Like Jesus.
Yeah,
Oh,
you know
and then he
their
comes out
fans
and
are.
he's got a howitzer, right? Like
Yeah,
this, and
yeah.
of course, like
That
he
was
feels
a
great. Like he
surprise.
escaped that shit, right? Like so, he had to
Yeah,
not be on that organization.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. What was his name? Matt. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's Matt
Ariza,
Marais.
yeah,
Yeah, he got he was released. I believe he was cut because of the
yeah, he got cut
regulations.
from the
So now the
Bills.
Bills, yeah, the Bills have to wonder like, okay, we let go a guy that was. I mean, it's just one preseason game, so I try not to get too carried away. But
Right.
from what I saw, that guy has a cannon.
Yeah, no, he definitely seemed to be physically prepared to do the job. The other aspect, like that whole mental thing, I feel like the Colts, just like they've been blessed at quarterback for the better part of 20 years, have also had really good kickers and
Yeah,
punters. Um, and obviously, what was was it Rigoberto that tore his ACL?
toward his Achilles.
Tore his Achilles.
Yeah,
Okay.
running
It's the
running
Kobe injury,
streets
eh?
at the end of
Running running sprints. Huh.
practice. Yeah, that was a
Running
story.
sprints at the end of
There
practice.
was there was some sort of controversy, I believe, at the time, like why is your starting punter running sprints at the end of one practice when the season is just like 2 weeks away? Which, just for the record, I think that the punter is a part of the team. If the team has to run sprints, then he has to run sprints too.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a punter. I don't care if you're a 45-year-old quarterback that has won
Yeah.
8 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
You're a part of the team. The team has to run sprints. You run sprints too.
Yeah. So the core of football is that it is a conditioning sport. Um, in your aerobic base is relevant. So I'd never poo-poo getting any extra conditioning, any work at all, just because you'll be better late, right?
Yeah,
Um, and that's really what it's, we keep saying it, but these games come down to a handful of plays, right? And I get it. A lot of times it's like a couple scoring plays, Jared, and it was a 2 touchdown game. No kidding. But sometimes it's just a shallow kickoff that leads to good field position, couple first downs, and an easy field goal at the end of the half. And then you had to give them the ball back. And then they went down and scored and they ended up winning by
yeah,
3, right? Like sometimes it's just like just bang bang. It just happens like that. And you didn't think about it at
yeah,
the time because the rest of the game's super tight. But it was like, hey, it was that kickoff, and then we allowed a couple first downs back to back, and then they got a field goal for no time. They got points for they didn't spend a bunch of time on the
yeah,
field. That's
yeah,
free points for them. And then they got the ball back. These things happen. We talk about like trapping teams all the time where you have the opportunity if you keep the ball here and then score, you then get the ball back and you kind of did the double dip. Right. And the Colts have
yeah.
had so
And
many
it's 2 for 1.
opportunities where you have to capitalize on those. So it feels like again, like I said, a little shift for me anyway. I don't know about you, but like since last week I expected that Texans wouldn't be able to hang, but then would come roaring back, right? And then it would end up being closer than expected. And I'm sort of changing my tune here a week out and saying like, look, unless the house falls apart for the Colts, it kind of appears like the Colts are 20 of 22, maybe 21 of 22 come game time in terms of starters. And
Yeah,
naturally, I think that bodes a lot better. Like you just are naturally going to have more bodies available come game day, and I think that um,
yeah.
that
With
that
that,
means this game could end up not being very close, especially if the Colts start out fast, are able to turn them over, and like I said, pile
yeah,
on.
take care of business.
Yeah,
Just take
game's
care
gonna
of business because you do what you have to do, and you don't beat yourself, then that's it. That's all you need to do. You're going off against a team that has literally like no trick. There is not one player where I'm like, okay, this is a guy that could, seriously complicate things for us. Perhaps Melvin Cooks, but
Yeah, I would say Brandon Cooks, like maybe
that's the
they're
only guy.
electric.
That's the only guy you have to worry about.
Right.
There is no one else like on the receiving team or running backs. And their offensive line isn't that great. It's kind of really bad.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, like who do you need to worry about on offense? And there is no one there. Brandon Cooks. That's it. That's the list. Then on defense, you're like, okay, who is the guy that can, take over the game? Jonathan Greenard, the edge rusher, is a player I really like. That's a guy that I'm like, okay, this is a really good football player. But he's not near, that J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, that level. You're like, okay, this is a guy that can make like 5 or 6 plays.
Right. With the requisite number of plays to keep the game close, right? Like he's not gonna be that kind of guy for them.
Either that gets the big sack, the fourth down stop, the run stop on 4th and goal, where plays that really win games. That players like J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, like they made them consistently for the Titans. You just have no guys like that.
Right. A lot of what Houston has going for it is in the future, right? And not week 1. Certainly not the week ahead. So yeah, I think what we could kind of do, just so we have some perspective, we would kind of think, let's for example, Jacksonville plays at the Washington Commanders, and Washington is a 3-point favorite at home. Remember, get 3 at home. Ooh, that's a upset city for Jacksonville week 1.
It's going to be a tough game to look at.
And the Titans are hosting the Giants. So Colts need to win this game because Tennessee should win their week 1 game. And
who is Tennessee going up against?
They're hosting the New York Giants. So they should win that game. Colts need to win. In addition to, you should just win this game against a bad team.
It's a division game.
Your division rival is winning a non-division game. Remember, I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this, but I believe that there are unimportant games on your schedule, and Houston is winning an unimportant game, or not Houston. Tennessee is winning an unimportant game. A non-division, it's not a division game, it's not a conference game. It's not impacting positively your ability to go to the playoffs. But what it does is it provides momentum. It's like a little skip button on a Hot Wheels track, right? Like it's just going to feel good for them. It's going to be that confirmation bias where like we as Colts fans, we think of the Titans as like a lesser organization, right? So when you watch them, it won't be as fluid, as good. There'll be more penalties. It'll look more ragtag. That's the Titan way, right? But ultimately, like, expect that they win that game. So then it confirms all that dumb shit that they're doing, right? And again, that's just like the digs from the Colts on Titans as a general.
I wouldn't be all too surprised if the Titans managed to drop this one,
Right.
They did just lose Harold Landry, who was like really big for them last year. They lost him for the season with a torn ACL, I believe it was, which sucks for him because he was a really good player and a guy that seemed like a really good guy, a really good football player. Torn ACL, you never wish that on anyone.
Right.
But that's one less talented player for the Titans. And I believe that the Giants are perhaps going to surprise some people this year. I believe that they had a really good offseason.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley, he should be healthy. He should, it's time for him, to show why he was the second overall pick. And he could have a big game against the Titans, rush defense. That was not all too spectacular last season. So perhaps we could be in for an upset here.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. I just highly doubt that. So let's
Yeah,
see here. The Colts are the chalk favorite to win their division. Just food for thought. And then Houston is the absolute next to like Atlanta, one of the worst,
yeah,
least good teams. I just like looking at the odds kind of guide your decisions, right? Because like the house always wins, right? So I always like to look at it to give you some idea because they know something I don't. Clearly,
yeah,
they never miss.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, um, so yeah, I know that now that we say that, right? Now that I've kind of waffled where last week I was like, oh, the Colts will start out quick, but Houston's got some pride now because they're free of the Deshaun Watson mess to play well and play themselves back in a game they have no business being in. And now that you see their roster availability, it's like, nope, I don't feel that way at all. I actually think they don't have the depth to hang, the talent to hang. And then once anybody goes down, like I think if like a corner goes down, it's just going to be tough for you defensively
yeah,
against this team that I
yeah,
think has they don't just have one running back, and then when that back goes down, it's three and out from then on. They have
yeah,
another guy that could very well just be the bell cow if he had to be. It probably wouldn't be pretty, right? It wouldn't be nearly as sweet as the league's leading rusher, right? But Naheem Hines gets the job done, right? And
yeah,
he's promised to us to be utilized more. Obviously, I think he's promised to us to be utilized more. Because he's the only consistent weapon the Colts have had, if you really think about it, outside of what Michael Pittman did last year. Like Naheem Hines been doing it. Um,
yeah,
so there's all the signs of a team, like we said last week, 9-8 last year. Data says the best case scenario is you come out +4, and then my thought process is if Deshaun Watson wasn't the person he was, and that's who you'd have got, that's like a 4-win improvement. But a guy like
yeah,
Matt Ryan at
perhaps, yeah,
36, 37 years old is more of like a 3-game improvement. So I expect better than what we saw last year. And last year, the problem was the Colts started slow on offense. And so I think if you can just not start slow, that +3 is not out of the picture at all, and it's a kind of a gift way to start your season, right? On the road against what is expected to be the worst of that your division has to offer.
yeah,
And that's just thinking like that's just the way Vegas sees it, right? But we can also see it on paper, right? Like they're just not going to have enough bodies to play this game at this level. Um, so yeah, I was thinking player of the game. Each week we kind of pontificate who we think's gonna be in player of the game, and then get out of here.
yeah.
I'll let you go
So yeah, you
first.
start. Ah, yeah, I'll go first. If
Yeah.
you, I believe that the player of the game this Sunday, I'm going to go like kind of on a limb here. It's probably not
You did say
like,
Paris was gonna have 2 touchdowns
yeah,
earlier.
yeah. In my opinion, Paris Campbell is going to be the player of the game. I believe that as he mentioned, the Texans are really missing a cornerback. They just have no bodies there. I believe that Paris Campbell, he had a great camp. Matt Ryan, like he seems to have developed a really nice thing with Matt Ryan. And I believe that Paris Campbell this year, he feels like he's going to have something to prove. Like he has to perform this year. He's out. And I believe that, first game, he's going to come out like guns blazing, going to like pick up right where he left off last year. You remember
Yeah.
he got injured in a 50-yard touchdown against the Texans, 60-yard
Yeah.
touchdown.
It was his toe, right?
Yeah, you remember that play where we were like, okay, this is like such an
It's a
unlucky injury
burner.
where the Texans player like falls on
Didn't
his
he
leg,
fell in
and
front of him and he
yeah,
stepped on it? I thought he stepped on his
yeah,
leg.
he was like
But he was
such an
like
unlucky
he
player.
was like a plant, like he was sprinting and it was his
Yeah,
plant foot, you know what I mean?
Yeah, such an unlucky play where you're like,
It was just
okay,
a completely random play that.
yeah.
And
So
that's the thing about
I,
him is like it's just been freak injury after freak injury, and it's like
yeah, just
you
a
hope
lot.
you hope he can stay athletic enough on the comeback, and then like you said, he's had like a monster camp. So yeah, I'm all about that. Um,
Yeah,
so I think the chalk pair. So I think the do not picks, Matt Ryan and Jonathan Taylor. I think you don't pick them because those are the guys that are going to touch it the most anyway, right?
yeah,
And so I think if I had to pick a guy to go crazy, I want it to be the rookie. I want it to be Alec Pierce, just because I think it will ease a lot of people's minds. It'll get a lot of more buy-in, right? When
yeah,
it Colts hit on their draft pick, right? Alec Pierce comes in and is an impact player at wide receiver for the Colts, and it wakes up a lot of the fan base that feels like the Colts are a two-trick pony, right? You have Michael Pittman, you have
yeah,
Jonathan Taylor, you might be able to nickel and dime me to death with Naheem Hines, but what can you really do outside of that? And obviously, in addition to guys like Michael Pittman, or in addition to Michael Pittman, in addition to Paris Campbell and Alec Pierce. Again, like I said, I think there's that Granson, Strawn, Mo Alley
yeah,
Cox have an opportunity here where there's 7 to 10 extra balls floating around here that an Ashton
yeah.
Doolin
You
or
should.
do they end up keeping Desmond Patton?
Yeah, yeah.
He
He
might
gets on the 50. Yeah,
he's going to end up getting an opportunity or two here. So it's all about taking advantage of the opportunities. But obviously, with the really the exception of Shaq Leonard, the Colts look healthy and better than they did last year. So that anytime that's what we were saying before the season starts, right? As opposed to like, oh, it's the same old shit. You know what I mean? Oh, we're
yeah,
trying out garbage. Because I can promise you, instead of the conversations that we're having about, man, it would be nice to get Ty back. Um,
yeah,
wouldn't it be nice if it was like, hey, somebody needs a quarterback and they give us $1 billion for Sam Ellinger and 1 million picks. And then, you know what I mean? Like, and then somebody needs, and the Colts get the benefit instead of having to go out and get somebody to replace somebody or having to worry
yeah,
about signing a TY. Well, what if Alec Pierce and Paris Campbell show out? Right? Like, wouldn't that just be a
yeah,
lot better? The guys that are actually here, and we're actually at camp because like I said, as much as it's great to recognize the Colts players that are on the field, it's a lot better for those guys that are young to get as much time as they can, right? Especially in this kind
yeah,
of game, right? Um,
yeah,
so yeah, a lot of people are gonna ask, like, how do y'all feel about T.Y. Hilton? If he was that good, he'd have been signed. Somebody out there needs a wide receiver. Like he'd have done that already. He's coaching his kid now. I think he's done. I'm pretty sure T.Y. Hilton's done, unless somebody just gets hurt. God forbid, right? And that's
yeah,
about it, right? Like, so the Colts can get out of this game, could easily win this game and not cost himself any bodies. That would be fantastic, right? That's pretty much the prayer you're saying anyway, right?
yeah.
But yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's what he wants.
So yeah, I think that's episode 33, the Melvin Bullitt episode of the Coltist.
Yeah,
Enjoy. There's football. I don't know about you, but Florida State LSU is on right now. Clemson's on plays tomorrow. Then there's Thursday night football, and that's week 1, and it's here, and it's 4 days away. So yeah, have a great week. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
yeah. It's
Football
literally
is
the most fun.
football is upon us, and we will
Couldn't be
talk.
happier.
Absolutely, we will talk to y'all next week.